Hey guys, your local emergency manager here. So you want to learn about what emergency management is. Maybe you're fresh out of high school and you're looking for a degree program to go into and emergency management caught your eye. Or maybe you started dating someone and they're emergency management majors and you have no idea what that is. Or maybe your child or grandchild is majoring in emergency management and you want to learn what that is so that you guys can talk about it. Whatever your reasons are, this is a video for you. Now, the internet's definition of emergency management is that emergency management is a managerial function charged with creating the framework within communities to reduce the vulnerability to hazards and cope with disasters. But you didn't click on this video to hear the internet's definition of emergency management. You probably came here to hear my definition of emergency management. Probably. My definition of emergency management is that emergency management is an all-hazards approach to mitigate, prepare, respond, and recover from disasters, both man-made and natural. But hey, that's just the short answer, and no one wants to hear the short answer. So for the long answer, I'd like to cover 3 main points. The 3 main points I'd like to cover with you today are the National Incident Management System, or NIMS, Comprehensive Vulnerability Management, or CVM, and Comprehensive Emergency Management, CEM. Now, the definition of NIMS is that NIMS is a nationwide approach to enable the whole community to work together to manage all threats and hazards. Basically, NIMS are kind of a set of rules that government organizations, private organizations, and nonprofit organizations use to work together to handle threats and hazards. CVM focuses on vulnerable populations such as the sick, the elderly, the poor, the handicapped, and among others. CVM focuses on vulnerable populations because they have the hardest time during the evacuation and recovery. CEM focuses on the 5 phases of emergency management. These 5 phases are mitigation, protection, prevention, response, and recovery. Now, when I started school, it was the 4 phases: mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery, but they've since changed that. This change was a welcome one because it strengthened emergency management. So now that everyone has been introduced to emergency management, let me know down in the comments if you have any questions. I'd gladly do a second part to this video that covers PPD 8, the Presidential Policy Directive 8, the Incident Command System, ICS, and also I'd like to go more in depth into the 5 phases of emergency management. If you guys want, I could definitely do that. Just let me know. If you like this video, go ahead and give me a like. If you didn't, give me a dislike. Please subscribe for all things emergency management. Thank you. Hey guys, your local emergency manager here. And this is part 2 to the last video I created called What is Emergency Management? So just to give you a little background, FEMA was created in 1979, but emergency management didn't really become a degree program until after the September 11th attacks. Emergency management is kind of the child of civil defense, and emergency management is really important to the community. So for this video, I'd like to go over the 5 phases of emergency management, along with resilience and resistance. But just for fun, I'd like to up the phases and make it the 6 phases of emergency management. That way we could include the old and the new. Alright, first up is mitigation. So mitigation is basically improving the infrastructure to lessen the impact of a disaster. A lot of great companies in the mitigation sector are the Department of Transportation, the Army Corps of Engineers, and a lot of other companies. Now the preparedness sector. So the preparedness sector involves a lot of emergency preparedness trainers, and also the preparedness sector kind of reminds me of the Boy Scouts, because the motto of the Boy Scouts is be prepared. There are a lot of people involved in the preparedness sector, such as firefighters, police officers, social workers, and anyone who responds during the response phase. Alright, next up is prevention and protection. So prevention and protection are basically the same thing. They both deal with the intelligence sector and all anti-terrorism tactics. Protection and prevention sector basically protects us from all terrorism attacks, both foreign and domestic. Alright, next up is the incident. This isn't part of the phases, but it's a very important part. The incident can be a tornado, a hurricane, an asteroid impact, or a terrorism attack. It could be anything that affects living things or property. An incident could be a hurricane, a tornado, a landslide, an avalanche, a terrorism attack, an asteroid impact, anything. You could even shrink an incident down to be on a smaller scale. For example, with environmental health and safety, they work in factories where oftentimes incidents happen, like someone chops their finger off or hurts themselves in another way, and that can also be an incident. All right, during your response phase is your first responders, your disaster responders, both volunteer and paid, and a lot of people are involved in the response. EMTs, firefighters, police officers, and a whole lot of other organizations such as the government sector, the private sector, and the volunteer organizations. All right, during the recovery phase, there's a lot of people involved in the recovery phase. Those that repair the infrastructure, and also crisis counselors. Crisis counselors give assistance to those who were affected by the disaster, and they assist them emotionally. All right, the next thing I'd like to talk about is resistance. So resistance is kind of a hard thing to achieve. Whenever a community is resistant to a disaster, it means that they're totally unaffected. One of the best examples of resistance that I could think of is what SpaceX is trying to achieve. They are trying to make humanity a multi-planetary species. This would make humanity resistant to extinction because we are spread out on 2 different planets. Alright, last but not least is resilience. So resilience means that the community can easily bounce back after a disaster. Disaster resilient communities are able to bounce back after a disaster with little effect. Alright, I hope you guys liked the video. Like, comment, and subscribe for all things emergency management, and stay tuned for episode 3 where I'll talk about all the career fields you guys could go into with an emergency management degree. Thanks guys. Hey guys, your local emergency manager here. This is my final video of my 3-part series of what is emergency management. Now for this video, I'd like to talk about some of the career fields you guys could go into with an emergency management degree. The first career is an emergency management coordinator, director, or emergency manager. The next one is disaster services specialist, director, manager, or coordinator. Now this one is one that I have experience with, and that's incident manager. There's disaster recovery and resiliency coordinator, business continuity manager, risk manager or specialist. Depending on the job, an emergency manager could easily fit into an environmental health and safety specialist or manager position. Now this next one is kind of a stretch, but not really, because this job is catastrophe adjuster. To be a catastrophe adjuster, you have to start in an entry-level position as a property adjuster, and then work your way up to a catastrophe position. But an emergency manager can easily fit into a catastrophe adjuster role. Depending on the job, an emergency manager could fit into a safety management position, a project manager position. With an emergency management degree, you could easily fit into an emergency preparedness management position or an emergency response coordinator position. Now I know with this video I just scratched the surface of all the career fields you guys could go into with an emergency management degree. Every year, new career fields are emerging for this degree program. But just let me know if you guys like this video with a comment or a like. Subscribe for all things emergency management. And I thank you guys for watching. Thanks.